Rick and Morty comic issue 3. Morty comes home and gets outraged that Jerry's trying to sell Rick's stuff at a garage sale. At first I just saw this as him standing up for Rick, which especially makes sense since Rick just sent him home without him. But then I realized the trouble it would cause random people if they bought Rick's technology and irresponsibly or obliviously used it. That'd be a disaster, and that could make a good plot. Though how would Morty find out where to go to resolve it other than the news? How would he know who bought what stuff? Sure, it's a good thing that this goes nowhere. I guess they learned their lesson and decided it was too dangerous to sell Rick's stuff. Why didn't Beth keep Jerry from doing this? Wasn't she supposed to be super loyal to her father? What took them so long to do this? Morty makes his father drop his coffee and gets grounded, and Beth fortunately sympathizes with Morty, and they talk about how he's been misbehaving since Rick went missing and he blames himself. But didn't he just come home? Apparently he's been here a while. Also, why would he blame himself? It was entirely Rick's fault that they even got sent to that prison in the first place. Just as he looks scared as a shadow looms over his bed, we cut back to Rick in the labyrinth, and it gets corrected that the sympathetic looking prisoner isn't in here because someone killed his wife and framed him. It was amusing that Rick didn't get the hint and said, "Fine, your husband's real killer. Look, I don't mean to just assume things." And the prisoner says he's wrong, and then says he's straight, and that's not the point. He wants to hold on to the battery for some reason, and Rick says he needs it to fix the transporter. Then they get threatened by giant spiders. I guess the giant monster and spiders are just a part of the wildlife of this planet, because why would Rick have it so that there's life-threatening monsters that could kill him in a prison he built for when he'd get arrested? Like, it couldn't be that he only really made this as a prison for his enemies, because it's Rick. He just kills his enemies. He wouldn't go through the trouble making a prison to put them in. I guess he was just desperate for a challenge, because it's Rick. He could easily wipe out all these monsters in the process of building the prison. He could have made them extinct with a disease. And since he's a curious mad scientist, it makes sense that even though they're running for their lives, Rick still insists on asking him what he's in here for, lightening the mood. The prisoner reveals that he had run a school bus off the road driving home drunk. And since he said fine and took forever to tell him, it's obvious that the reason he took so long was that he was embarrassed of what he did. Rick's relieved to hear that he really was a bad guy because it means he won't feel guilty about blasting him with a ray gun off screen. I guess they used him as bait to stall the monsters with eating him, since he's talking as if this was already part of his plan, saying that he feels so much better about this. Then at night, Beth complains about Jerry's basement being a mess, complains about cleaning after her husband, thinking that she's being a 50s sitcom wife, even though she's a heart surgeon. And she resents her husband playing golf all day. Then she finds the broken fragments of something that she immediately assumes held an animal or something. How? I mean, I guess it looks like a black egg. Then some yellow alien jumps on her head and knocks her out as she blames Jerry for this, even though she knows it was one of Rick's things. But she's smart enough to blame Jerry for breaking that prison in half. Summer then asks why it's so dark after coming home, and Morty talks to her suspiciously formally when he mentions that they haven't talked in some time, and asks her to take a seat. Summer, being familiar with Rick and Morty for so long, naturally gets suspicious of his uncharacteristic behavior and tries to make an excuse to go leave. Although she'd be way smarter if she just said this while walking away instead of just standing there. So of course, the possessed Morty dives towards her, telling her to take a seat, and chases her. He grabs her, she kicks him, and hides behind a door. She sheds a tear at having to ignore her brother saying that he just thought she was one of them. An overly vague thing to say. He could be telling the truth, but he could also be lying and possessed by one of those yellow aliens, so she decides to stay on the safe side. She admits that she can't stay in there forever. I guess she locked the door, and she admits that he's right. I mean, she would have to go to the bathroom eventually. Then she sees the actual Morty wrapped up in a cocoon, and then he hears her mother telling her to help her because Morty's gone crazy. Her mom is possessed too and misses a punch, and Summer dives into her and they fall down the stairs. I like the purple bandana Beth's wearing. Reality ensues a little as a fake Morty reveals that Summer hurt her leg from the fall and won't run far, and he's got a crowbar. He tells her to assimilate and become one with the alien master, who will feast on her life force because apparently that's just what his species has to do. because a life force is a tangible thing that can be feasted on, apparently. Then Rick shows up just in time and destroys him with a ray gun. I would have rather just seen him completely concealed in the light of the ray instead. Like, only saw a red light. Rick knows what had been going on and says that was a Class 2 cloner beast and it could have taken down all of society, and yet he brought it to Earth. So why didn't he just kill the cloner beast he trapped? Maybe he was experimenting to try to find out how to make a disease that would wipe out the entire species, but also not kill the victims too quickly for that. That's the only reason he'd keep them alive. I mean, he's made clones before without them, like in Season 1, so he wouldn't need them to make clones. For some reason, Summer asks if this isn't the real Rick because Rick just showed up after months of being missing, even though Rick must have escaped prison anyways for the cloner beast to have bound him and made a clone out of him. Really, it took him months to escape his own prison, so it took him months to find out what that prisoner was really in for. That is more balanced and fair considering he escaped in so little issues, but I didn't get that impression. Even Archie Sonic always cared to put yellow text boxes in the corners of panels to indicate how much time had passed in its time skips, instead of keeping it ambiguous. I guess he really screwed up by making the prison so large. If it was smaller, he would have reached the escape place a lot earlier. That's common sense. Maybe even a genius like him can get carried away and build a prison too large. I mean, it is a maze. He was so focused on making it a maze that he made it too big to make room. He lampshades that Summer should know it's really him because he just killed the alien. Rick says that his escape doesn't feel too convenient because he was gone for 90 days, and Summer finds it incriminating because he was actually gone for 82 days. Rick reveals that he exaggerated for dramatic effect, naturally rounding the number up, and it's always interesting how, no matter how smart he is, he can't escape from his own personality, screwing things up for him with bad social skills. Like in the finale of Season 3, where it all comes back to bite him. Summer asks him to prove it, and he says that when she was 3 there was a fire, but she doesn't remember because she got burned. And he hits her with the ray gun while smiling jokingly, and says that if he was the alien, he wouldn't have changed the setting to stun. Probably. It's a kind of amusing dark humor gag that's typical of Rick, and isn't meant to be taken seriously. Rick just doesn't have much patience, because it could have actually told her something only he would know about her. Well, if she was suspicious of him even though he knew that Rick was supposed to have been in prison, which is something only the family would know, she might be running under the assumption that the cloner beasts steal the memories of the ones they cloned. So a clone Rick would know stuff about her. There's nothing he could have said, but still, she would have realized it was the real him after he spent enough time in the house without trying to assimilate her. He just wanted to relieve some stress after all the time he spent in that labyrinth. Since he didn't have to deal with abuse from a bunch of prisoners and guards, he still had a way better time in prison than most people do. So even though he took months to escape, he still did a smart thing by making a prison for himself that wouldn't have those problems. The story ends with Jerry coming home at night all happily and looking shocked at seeing Summer unconscious and a cartoon bone remaining of the fake Morty in front of him. This story was about the family being cloned by some alien parasite cloner beast that Rick kept trapped in his basement for some reason. All thanks to Jerry breaking its prison. I guess it makes sense because Rick would have kept them alive to research a way to wipe them all out with a disease. It's interesting to imagine that one of the things Rick does for fun is find ways to wipe out dangerous species of aliens in one fell swoop. So he's actually doing good for the universe sometimes, and relieving stress by destroying evil beasts, so there's a selfish reason. Summer gets spared because she came home the latest, and she runs away avoiding the clones. And then Rick comes home at the last minute thanks to a battery fixing his transporter and fries the fake Morty with his ray gun. And Summer's naturally still paranoid. The story did tension well. My only complaints about it are that, one, it mostly takes place in the dark. So it was harder to see the background around the characters and see where they were going. Especially in my dimly lit bedroom where my light switch is broken and all I have is a lamp. Also, I really can't believe it'd take months for Rick to escape his own prison that he built so he'd be able to escape it. He had a random idiot moment by building the prison so big they took forever to find the way out, just to justify the story happening instead of Rick having arrived home with Morty and defeating the clones way quicker. You'd think he would have put the way out of the prison right next to the pool where he and Morty were dropped into. You'd think he'd have kept the battery with the transporter, so he and Morty could have escaped immediately. But why did he make a portal that only had enough charge for one person? If he had enough time to make an entire gigantic prison in spare time, why didn't he have the time to make a portal with enough charge for 2 people? It wouldn't take more time to make 2 portals? He knew Morty would be participating in his crime. He really had a derp moment just to justify him not coming home with Morty. I mean, the whole reason he made that prison was so he could escape from it. So wouldn't he have made the portal first, and thus had plenty of time to make it have a bunch of charge? If he had made the prison to simply imprison people, then, again, Rick wouldn't do that. He just kills his enemies. It would be overly convoluted and take much longer to make a death trap prison. Also, I guess the fact that he didn't literally time travel or shatter time was why the red time police alien from the show didn't appear, and instead he had to deal with Professor Talk. I guess Professor Talk specializes specifically in the destruction of potential futures.